Hello friends, it feels like it's been a minute since I've done a sit down video. My name is Aisling and of course I'm here today to talk about books. Today I'm going to do a bit of a booktube tag, so I'm going to do the 20 questions book tag. There are 20 questions. Let's get cracking. So the first question is, how many books is too many books in a series? Well, I suppose the answer there really kind of depends, doesn't it? I couldn't say that there is a definitive number. I will say sometimes I feel like series go on a little too long and they become money rackets rather than a means of actually telling a story. But that said, I honestly think that if there's somebody out there that's getting comfort from the 40th book in a series, then who are any of us to say that that's too many books, really? Because look, we're all only doing our best, and personally I do like a trilogy, but I think it just really matters and it's really kind of a personal thing, isn't it? I don't have an answer. Next question. How do you feel about cliffhangers? I'm okay with them. I don't mind them at all, whether or not there is another book coming or if that is the ending that we're getting, full stop. I think I kind of like a bit of an ambiguous ending sometimes, and I know that can be quite a controversial thing to say, and I don't want to read thousands of pages in a series and then come and have a bit of a cliffhanger at the very end, but generally I don't mind them too much. I think it's kind of fun to have things left a little bit open and to be able to wonder. Hardcover or paperback? I like to read paperbacks, but I like to look at hardcovers on my shelves, so paperbacks. Favorite book? Okay, so for the past number of years I would have said that this book, Tin Man by Sarah Winman, which is an absolutely beautiful book, is my favourite book. This is by far my most gifted book. If you've been watching me for a while, you've heard me talk about this book. I came across this book in the early months of 2018. I actually read it on the 18th of February 2018. I don't know how I remember that, but I do. And I read it basically in one day. And I've always been a reader, but I feel like this is the book that really catapulted me back into reading. It's about a man named Ellis and his wife Annie and his best friend Michael, and it is a love story of sorts. It's really beautifully written. Sarah Winman is such a wonderful author. She has 4 novels and every one of them is just fantastic in its own way. Also, I will give a shout out to her latest novel, Still Life, because that blew me away too. But I think for what this book did for me and for sentimental reasons, this is probably my favourite book of all time. Now, sometimes I read books and it makes me question it, like A Little Life, potentially. Sometimes I think that might be my favourite book, but I think this has traditionally been my favourite book for a really long time. Next up then is my least favourite book, and I don't have an answer for this one. There are definitely books that I haven't enjoyed, and that's okay. If I really don't enjoy a book, I tend to not finish it. I don't finish books just to give out about them. I read because I want to enjoy what I'm reading, so I know that there are books that I have not enjoyed that much, and that's fine. I'm not here to give out about books. I mean, the undertaking of an author to write a book, for somebody like me to sit here and be like, it was terrible, it's the worst book ever, I'm not going to do that. Love triangles, yes or no? Again, I kind of don't mind either way. If it fits the story, if it works, then yeah, sure. But if it's just thrown in there just as a plot point to bring in readers who typically read from different genres, then no. Again, it just depends on this story. Most recent book you just couldn't finish. Here's a controversial one for you now. Yellowface. Yeah, I just couldn't get into it. Now, I did try to listen to it on audio, so I haven't read it physically, and sometimes I feel like I struggle with audiobooks, or I struggle with a certain type of book on audiobook, and I had heard that this audiobook was really good and that it was really kind of propulsive and compulsive, so I tried to listen to it and I got about 50% of the way through and I was like, I don't know if I don't like this story, this, like the actual book, or if I don't like the book in this format. So I put it down and maybe I'll go back and try to read it physically one day. Maybe I won't. I don't know. It definitely wasn't my favourite of R.F. Kuang's books that I've read so far. I'll put it that way. A book you're currently reading. So I am reading the third book in the Farseer trilogy, Assassin's Quest. It is by Robin Hobb, and I am well over 700 pages in, and it is, I think, about 840 pages, so I'm definitely touching the end. I have loved this trilogy through and through, and I know that this third book is the one that people feel really lets the trilogy down, but I don't hate it. It's very much a quest in that we are constantly on a journey in this one, and it feels like we're not hitting any sort of major plot points. It feels kind of like 2 steps forward, something happens, we're knocked back a step kind of the whole way through. But I really feel like Robin Hobb's writing is so immersive that every time that I pick up her books, I forget that I'm reading, and that's really hard for me sometimes. I find it really hard to become immersed in a story sometimes. I know that this third book is going to be the one that really disappoints people, that's not going to draw them in. But for me personally, I've really enjoyed it. I've really loved this trilogy. I do maybe think that this book in many ways has been the weakest, but it has not put me off recommending this trilogy at all. It's a very slow trilogy as fantasy goes. It's very character driven, which is quite unusual. We follow Fitz, who's the illegitimate son of the king in waiting, and he is brought up in the keep but not really accepted into the royal family. He has some magic that is kind of looked down upon, and then he has another sort of magic that comes with his family line. We follow him as he is trained as an assassin, and there is a lot of political intrigue. There's a lot of really fun characters. It's been a trilogy that so far I have enjoyed with my whole heart. Last book you recommended to someone? I can't actually think specifically of a book that I just recommended to somebody. I mean, that's what I do on here, right? I guess my last video was a vlog, and I kept banging on about how much I loved Words of Radiance by Brandon Sanderson. So that was probably my biggest recommendation of late, but you have to read The Way of Kings first because it's the second book in a series. Oldest book you've read? Surely one of the classics. I haven't read the likes of the Iliad or the Odyssey or anything like that, so I don't know. I know if I try to arrange the books that I've read on Goodreads by publication date, it's going to have like modern editions of classics, so it's not really going to be accurate. Definitely a classic. I'm sorry, I can't be more specific than that. Favorite author? I think again probably Sarah Winman, although I will say Robin Hobb is really coming up there, and I've been reading a bit of Brandon Sanderson lately as well, and I think he could be somebody that I really love as well. But it's very subjective, and you can ask me on any day of the week and that will change depending on what I feel like reading. I tend to love books that really make me feel something. Generally books that make me feel sad I really love. I think Sarah Winman probably pips everybody to the post, but I also love Sarah Waters. I also love Donna Tartt. Then in terms of poets, I love Mary Oliver, Ada Limon, Sylvia Plath. It's really difficult to pick an absolute all-time favourite. Buying books or borrowing books? Well, at the rate that I was buying them in the past 2 years, I'm probably going to say buying books. That said, I've really slowed down on my buying. I've bought very few books this year. Most of those have been Kindle books or Kindle deals or Brandon Sanderson books because they're just too big for me to actually read physically. I do borrow books, but I find the whole like having to bring them back at a certain time to be a little bit stressful because I'm very much a mood reader, and that's the other thing. If you have a book on hold, you don't know when you're going to get it, so I'll put it on hold today because I really want to read it today, and then I'll get it in a month's time and be like, I don't want to read this today or anytime soon. So I think just from a mood reader's perspective, I definitely like to buy books. But that said, it's not something that's really on my radar at the moment. I'm trying very hard to read every book that's on my shelves at the moment, and I'm getting there slowly but surely, so that's good. A book you dislike that everyone seems to love? There are probably a few. One that's just popping into my mind. It's not a book that I actually actively disliked, but I read this book as an arc and I thought it was decent. I think I gave it 3 stars. And then it was published and it became such a darling. And that book is Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. I liked it, but I didn't really see what everybody else saw in it. So it's a book that follows 2 characters, Sam and Sadie, and they meet as children and they become friends through their mutual love for video games, and they grow up and they both study video game development, I think, in college, and that's kind of the background for the story. And some of it I really loved, and then parts of it that people are really obsessed with I didn't really get, and that's okay. I didn't hate it by any means. As I said, I gave it 3 stars, which I think is a decent rating, but I just didn't love it. Bookmarks or dog ears? I tend to use bookmarks. I just like having bookmarks. It's an extra book accessory that I can have. I love having book stuff. I have nothing against dog earing books. You do you. You write in your books, you scribble in your books, you do whatever, it's your books. As long as they're your books and they're not borrowed from somebody else, then you do you. But personally, I really like having bookmarks. A book that you can always reread. That book for me is probably The Little Prince by Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I'm so bad at pronouncing that name every time, but it's probably my most reread book of all time. I've been reading it since I was a child, and I used to carry it around in my bag with me everywhere, and I mean for years. So I think as profound as the book is, it has a massive sentimental value to me as well, and I'm not much of a rereader anyway, so to have read a book time and time again, it would definitely be The Little Prince. Can you read while hearing music? I actually tend to read while listening to music, just to block out other noises because I'm very easily distracted. But it has to be music without lyrics, and it has to be really relaxing music. So I tend to listen to like a playlist, a contemporary classical playlist that has lots of like Niels Fram and Ludovico Einaudi and Oliver Arnolds and that kind of music. So yeah, but I do tend to listen to music a lot while I'm reading. One POV or multiple POVs? So again, I think it really depends on the book, but I do tend to really enjoy multiple points of view. That would probably be my preference, but also it really depends, because sometimes you read a book and you really love one point of view and the rest of them are not doing it for you, and it makes it really frustrating read to have to wait to get back to the story that you're really enjoying. But I think if it's done really well, then multiple points of view are for me. Do you read a book in one sitting or over multiple days? And let me tell you, like, I'm in the middle of an 800 and something page book. I cannot read that in one sitting. I'm trying, I'm doing my best. But yeah, I do sometimes just, like, if I have a day like today where it's really dark and wet outside and there's not much going on that I have to do, I will sit down and I will read a book. And I will read potentially hundreds of pages of that book, and sometimes that means that I will finish a book in a day. But I do kind of tend to like to read a book over the space of a few days, because you kind of get to mull over it and you get to think about it while you're away from it. And also I do probably have a preference for longer books as well, if I had to choose. So it's just actually not really possible to read a lot of the books that I read in one day. That said, I did read what is probably my favourite book of all time in one day. Final question, which is question number 20. Who do you tag? If you want to do this book tag, then you fire ahead. I'm not going to tag anybody in particular. And also, if you're a subscriber and you're just watching and you don't actually have a channel, if you want to answer the questions down below, I'd love to hear your answers. So yeah, a little quick video this week. I hope that you're all doing really well. Don't forget to like and of course to subscribe if you want to see more. And yeah, that's that. I hope you're taking care. I hope you're minding yourself, minding each other, and I'll chat to you next week for another video. Bye bye.